Good evening, feeble-minded Earthlings. Welcome to another episode of the Intergalactic Review. My name is Imperial Starbeast, and if you're receiving this transmission, it's because I've taken over your mind, and we are now interacting as one. Tonight I'd like to talk about Pacific Rim.
We always thought alien life would come from the stars.
In 2013, massive alien monsters called Kaiju began emerging from an interdimensional portal called the Breach at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean and attacking coastal cities. In response, humanity unites to create massive robots called Jaegers.
The second attack hit Manila.
Co-piloted by two people, these gigantic humanoid mechs successfully stopped the monstrous threat.
Two pilots. Our minds, our memories.
5 years later, world leaders decide to cease funding for the Jaeger program and replace it with coastal defense walls as Kaiju are appearing more frequently, and Jaegers are being destroyed as quickly as they are built. The walls are quickly proven to be ineffective, so all remaining Jaegers are relocated to Hong Kong under the command of Marshal Stacker Pentecost, played by Idris Elba, who plans to try to destroy the breach using a tactical nuclear weapon, even though previous attempts to do so have failed.
Today we face the monsters that are at our door.
On the verge of defeat, the forces defending mankind have no choice but to turn to two unlikely heroes. Raleigh Beckett, a washed-up Jaeger pilot called out of retirement, played by Charlie Hunnam, and an untested trainee, rookie Mako Mori, played by Rinko Kikuchi, as part of a last-ditch effort to defeat the Kaiju.
It is pretty cool.
Together, they stand as mankind's last hope against the mounting apocalypse.
Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim is an American science fiction monster film, directed by Guillermo del Toro and produced by Legendary Pictures. The screenplay was written by Travis Beacham and del Toro from a story by Beacham. While walking on the beach near Santa Monica Pier, Beacham imagined a giant robot and a giant monster fighting to the death. He later conceived the idea that each robot had two pilots, asking, "What happens when one of those people dies?" Saying that this would be a story about loss, moving on after loss, and dealing with survivors' guilt. It was released in July of 2013, receiving generally positive reviews. The visual effects, action sequences, and nostalgic style were highly praised. While it underperformed at the box office in the United States, it was highly successful in other markets, thus labeling the film as a box office success. It earned a worldwide total of more than $411 million, becoming del Toro's most commercially successful film. The piloting of a Jaeger's neural load is too much for a single pilot to handle alone, meaning they must first be physically linked to another pilot, a concept called drifting. When pilots drift, they quickly gain intimate knowledge of each other's memories and feelings, and have no choice but to accept them. Del Toro found this concept's dramatic potential compelling. He said, "The pilot's smaller stories make a bigger point, which is that we're all together in the same robot in life. Either we get along or die. The idea of the movie is for us to trust each other, to cross over barriers of color, sex, beliefs, whatever, and just stick together." Del Toro acknowledged this message's simplicity, but said he would have liked to have seen adventure films with similar morals when he was a child. The film's characters all have little arcs conducive to this idea. Del Toro stated, "I think that's a great message to give kids. That guy you were beating the crap out of 10 minutes ago, that's the guy you have to work with 5 minutes later. That's life. We can only be complete when we work together." The film centers on the relationship between Beckett and Mori, but it's not a love story in a conventional sense. Both are deeply damaged human beings who have decided to suppress their respective traumas. Their relationship is necessarily one of respect and perfect trust. The film is a love story without a love story. It has all the elements of love without arriving at love itself. Both Beckett and Mori have suffered profound personal tragedies. One of the script's central ideas is that two damaged people can metaphorically become one, with their figurative missing pieces connecting almost like a puzzle. The character interactions were just enough to give a little backstory and motivation to pass time between the fight scenes. The idea of connecting two people's thoughts to pilot the Jaeger was interesting, but failed to invoke any meaningful emotional performance. Principal photography began on November 14th of 2011 in Toronto and lasted through April of 2012. Del Toro had never shot a film in less than 115 days, but only had 103 to shoot. To achieve this, he created a splinter unit that he can direct early in the day before the main unit and on his off days. Industrial Light and Magic was chosen to create the visual effects. Del Toro hired Oscar winners John Knoll and Hall T. Hickel, both known for their work on the Star Wars prequel trilogy and the Pirates of the Caribbean films. Legacy Effects co-owner Shane Mann was tasked with building the suits, helmets, and con pods. Oscar winner and special effects artist Clay Piney was also brought on board. The film features extensive miniature effects shots provided by 3210 Studios. The scenes involved the creation of a quarter-scale office building interior that was destroyed by the fist of a Jaeger, as well as a sequence that depicted several rows of seats in a soccer stadium blown apart. Additionally, 3210 provided several practical elements for ILM's compositing team, including dust clouds, breaking glass, and water effects. Del Toro wanted to break from the mass death and destruction featured in contemporary blockbuster films, and made a point of showing the streets and buildings being evacuated before the Kaiju attacks, ensuring that the destruction depicted is completely remorseless. I feel this was a mistake. After watching films like Godzilla vs. King Kong, I feel Pacific Rim is void without this tension. Godzilla created a world that has to deal with the death and destruction that was left behind in major cities. The human element of the story is in the rebuilding from the destruction. Without this inherent danger, Pacific Rim fails to create a sense of panic needed to save humanity. Nonetheless, the movie's colorful and fun to watch. Del Toro drew inspiration from Francisco Goya's The Colossus painting and hoped to invoke the same sense of awe with the film's battles. The result is massive in scale as fight scenes between the Jaegers and Kaiju play out as a ballet full of carnage and beauty. Del Toro told the entire team at ILM that the movie needs to be theatrical, operatic, and romantic. He went for a very saturated color palette, filling the movie with saturated greens, purples, pinks, and oranges. I love how each Jaeger cockpit has a different look and feel, setting the tone for each group of pilots and giving you something different to look at while pilots are interacting with one another during battle. Del Toro's considered the film Digital Water its most exciting visual effect, stating the water dynamics in the movie are technically beautiful, but also artistically incredibly expressive. He set out to make the water a character in itself, timing the water precisely, directing each wave as they came crashing down. The classic Japanese woodblock print, The Great Wave off Kanatawa, was a common motif in the ocean battles. Del Toro recalled that he would say, "Give me a Hukasi wave," using the waves and weather in the movie very operatically. The film's score was composed by Raman Jaldi. Everything has a superhero feel to it, and I can imagine some tracks doubling on a Marvel soundtrack. The score is uplifting and grandiose and works well with the action sequences on screen. I love the tracks with Tom Morello on guitar. It gave off a 90s anthem feel. The soundtrack peaked at number 7 on US Billboard Top Soundtracks. Pacific Rim was nominated for 21 awards across multiple award ceremonies. It earned an Annie Award for Outstanding Achievement in Animated Effects in a live-action production, as well as Best Visual Effects by John Knoll at the Hollywood Film Awards. It also took home Best Horror Sci-Fi Film at the Las Vegas Film Critics Society. Inspired by the character of Mako Mori, the Mako Mori test was created as a set of requirements designed to measure the level of gender equality in a film or TV show. Her criteria required one female character with her own narrative arc, independent of that of a male character. Makomori is celebrated both by fans of the franchise and in academic circles as a successful representation of a strong and non-sexualized character who is both female and a person of color. Notably, Pacific Rim balances her identities as both a person of color and a woman extremely well. At the end of the day, this is a kaiju movie, and Del Toro delivers by giving audiences what they want more than anything: large-scale kaiju destruction. But the film struggles to deliver genuine emotion within its character storylines. Everything feels like a long video game sequence, colorful and full of excitement, giving you just enough story to get you to the next epic battle scene. Don't get me wrong, the cinematography and color grading is fantastic. But after a while it becomes tiresome to look at. From CGI fight sequence to CGI fight sequence, there was no tension because there was little to no fear from the lack of humanistic perspective. Sure, the Jaeger pilots were in danger, but somehow the cities were evacuated within minutes of Kaiju coming to shore, allowing for massive destruction to take place with no loss of life. Compared to Kong Skull Island and Godzilla 2014, Pacific Rim fails to deliver any consequential action if humanity fails to subdue the beast. At worst, insurance premiums around port cities would go up to cover the lost property. It would have been nice to see people interacting with the kaiju, either running in terror, being stepped on, or smashed by objects thrown around. There was one moment when someone was eaten whole, but even that was short-lived. The attack of the kaiju is a rallying cry for all of humanity to come together to end the threat. It's a wrestling match between humanity and the destructive powers of the natural world, and it plays out on the largest scale possible. For these reasons, I give Pacific Rim a C. Thank you for participating, and please stay tuned for more sci-fi movie reviews. Until then, drop me a comment below and tell me why you love or hate Pacific Rim. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications, because this transmission may be the only one you hear from space.